Welcome to the Islamic Library Association. We are dedicated to showcasing Muslims' rich contributions to literature and society while advocating for accurate representation and equity in libraries. Hello and assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Khalisah Harris. I am a librarian and the founder of the Islamic Library Association. Through this work, we advocate for equity in libraries and public spaces, ensuring accurate representation of Muslims while highlighting the incredible contributions Muslims have made and continue to make to the literary landscape. This channel serves as a space to celebrate and amplify Muslim voices, recognize Muslim contributions, and promote the diversity of perspectives within libraries and society. Today, we're joined by Marwa Ayache. Marwa is a dedicated school librarian who loves libraries since the beginning of her youth as a young patron and volunteer in her local branch. She entered the professional library world in 2021 while pursuing her MLIS and has since gained experience in both public and school libraries, building on her background in education. Outside of work, Marwa enjoys reading, participating in her local time bank, exploring vendor fairs, playing on her Nintendo Switch, and traveling. Assalamu alaikum, Marwa. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good, alhamdulillah. We are so happy that you could be with us. And I think that many people do not realize how intertwined public libraries and school libraries are. And I look forward to hearing your perspective as a Muslim school librarian. So let's just dive right into it. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey into librarianship?
Yeah, so like you mentioned in my bio, I was a library volunteer when I was younger, and before that I was always going to like library events in my local library. I would always go to like movie nights, craft nights, and I became a volunteer. In high school, preface this, I was always interested in libraries and becoming a librarian, but in 2008, 2009, when like the whole, when the recession happened and all that, a lot of school librarians specifically got cut from schools, and I wasn't like too interested in being a public librarian. So I was like, well, I'll go be a classroom teacher because that seems like the closest thing. So that's what I did. I got my teaching certificate 6 through 12th education for social studies and English. Like those were the two subjects I could teach at those grade levels. And then my first year of teaching, unfortunately, was COVID. And your first, like everyone will always say your first year of teaching is very hard. And COVID made it a lot harder. So I was like, well, maybe this is the time to go to library school and become a librarian. And even if I'm not a school librarian, at least like maybe I could be a children's librarian or work at a public library, or, I could go work at like an academic library. I had a lot of options. So in 2021, I went to library school. I was an intern at a public library and at a museum library. That's where I started. Um, and I was an intern, the adult side of a public library. And then I worked at a museum and then after those two internships, I worked at a university library, managing the circulation desk, and managing like student workers and things like that. And then I got my first official librarian job in my last semester of grad school. So I was a children's librarian. So I've kind of done a lot of different library jobs because I was also really trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I kind of did settle on being a children's librarian just because it was the closest thing to being a school librarian, because we did do outreach with a lot of schools and things like that. And with like working in an academic library, and shadowing kind of the librarians there, I did feel more like an office job. And even at the museum library I worked at, also felt like an office job and just like working in adult services. I don't know. It's more fun working with kids, I think, than having to serve adults sometimes. And I think that like being a younger person, I was like, I wanted to do a lot more things that would pull younger people into the library. And then, where I'm at currently posted a position for a school library, jumped on that, and it's been a great experience to learn how to be a school librarian and how to navigate the bureaucracies of school districts and things like that from the perspective of a school librarian. Because even though I was a classroom teacher first and I was an educator first, like things are much more different for school librarians, and I a lot of times like classroom teachers or even other staff members will get more benefits or privileges that are not always bestowed upon school librarians. And I think it's always this it gives into this idea that like no one really knows what we do.
So you had a lot of different roles, but within different fields of librarianship. So you mentioned volunteering, public libraries, academic libraries, and school librarian. So you've had a good mixture, and it sounds like your favorite is being a school librarian, which you are today. And you also went in during the thick of COVID. So now that COVID has passed, with what you're doing now, what does a typical day look like for you?
So what I'm doing right now, so I'm at 4 buildings in my current district. I'm at a different library every Tuesday through Friday, and so I'm basically seeing classes all day, checking out books to students, and they do an activity while they're waiting to have their books be checked out. Because I call them up by table, and then every Monday I'm at a different building doing cataloging or shelving, catching up on repairs. But if I have money to order books, I put in a book order. So it's kind of the backside of like being a librarian. So that's kind of how a typical, I guess, week in my life looks like. More so than a day in my life. If depending on the building, I might do bus, I might do lunch duty, or I'm helping with like a student arrival or student dismissal. Other times I might be. Sometimes I stay after school to do like at one building, I have student volunteers that come in and help me weed because I kind of hate weeding, and so I let the kids do it because they like the idea of scribbling out the barcode. They like to scan the books in the system, so I let them do that because I was like, it's fun for them, or they help me shelve and organize like the picture books. And I've also helped with tutoring. So and a lot of these like extra duties have been paid for, like monitoring these student volunteers, doing tutoring, doing lunch duty. So that's also a plus. It's something that I also enjoy doing. Yeah.
So with your current job as a school librarian, how has being Muslim shaped your perspectives in this position?
So I believe that every child deserves the same access to materials and books, and I think that that is, if you read the Quran and what are a lot of the core tenets of the religion is like that is accessibility, offering service to help others, things like that. Like that is such a core thing of the religion. So I think that's very important. I think and also education and knowledge and being able to obtain knowledge and learn, that's also a big part of it too. So that's kind of what I bring to my job and to the position, to the work that I do. And like I think that it's not even something that like people can accuse me of like imposing anything on the kids, because I'm like, well, don't every child should have access to knowledge and education and books. Like there's no agenda behind what I'm doing. And if you don't, if you're in education or you work with kids and you are like think that's some kind of agenda, then maybe you need to reevaluate what you're here for. So that's one of the main things that I bring. I think students to find joy in coming to school and coming to the library and getting books and learning. I think a lot of that has been kind of stripped from education from schools because due to standardized testing and a lot of other stuff. And so I think bringing it back to to what it was when I was a student.
So you talked about how you don't impose anything, but you feel how each child should be able to see themselves and see other people and things like that. Do you feel that your faith influences the way you support the students, the teachers, or the wider school community?
Think it, I mean, I think it does, like, unintentionally, like, I think just because it's how I, like, carry myself, and I think now as an adult, I have a better understanding of the religion and than when I was a kid, and I'm more, like, tapped into the spiritual side of things and, like, the core tenets of the religions, and, like, kind of I've done a lot of, like, learning more about it and, in my own ways. The one thing that I do like about, like, Islam and, like and this can be applied to other religions too, is that, like, it
Mhm.
can be a guiding mechanism for, like, having principles and good morals and things like that, and not that I think you need to follow an organized religion to have those things, but, like, I do think it can help, right? So I think that, how I carry myself is that I'm influenced by these things, and those influences guide what I do, and it's just an unintentional thing of who I am and my personality and all that.
You're ultimately saying that Islam impacts the decisions that you make and the way that you operate and function, and therefore that intentionally uh, impacts the people who you're around just because
Yeah.
of your beliefs. So, what are some of the challenges that you face as a Muslim school librarian?
Well, nothing really directly to my faith or anything. Oftentimes I notice that there is still lots of work to be done in terms of like having accessibility to different books and things of different cultures and communities and things like that. And also opening up students to other points of view and perspective. And I say that to say because we have a Bible club and I work at a public school and but we have at 2 of the 4 buildings I work at, there's a Bible club, and I was like, yeah, I think that's great for the kids and families who want that and are interested in it, but I do feel like if it was any other religion, there might be some issues with that or some backlash, or some people I think a lot more people would complain. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be a thing, but if we're gonna do this, I know there are some kids, like, we have Jehovah's Witnesses in my district, we have some kids that are Muslim in my district. I think that that is kind of like a challenge, and it's hard when it's kind of been like an institutional thing to kind of break, but, so it's kind of like and the thing is, like, too, that Bible club is hosted in the library, and,
Mm,
like, it's yes, that's probably why I said that. I listen, I also believe that the library is a social hub, it's a place that's meant for people to gather and to meet and things like that, and I don't mind if people are using the library to do things. I always tell staff and students that as long as you put the library back together and you clean up, but I just take some concern with that because I don't feel like everyone is being represented. Like it's either academic stuff or these after school clubs where it's not accurately representing our student population or that are maybe only promote one perspective.
very well said. So you're ultimately saying, as a Muslim school librarian, a challenge is to see institutional barriers and institutional systems that allows one perspective or programs for one group of people and not the others. You've mentioned
Mhm,
how there's different religions practiced within your students. So yes, there's some Christian students, Jehovah's Witness students, Muslim students. However, there's only a Bible
mhm.
club.
Yeah.
So yes, that is definitely a challenge. And not only are the other things not offered, but you said that you believe that there will be backlash.
It's always, I think, for any librarians, especially for school librarians, that's always a concern.
Mhm.
And especially because, like, in our area, there's been a lot of Moms for Liberty has been kind of active.
Yes.
They've got to school board meetings, they ran for elections. They've lost all their elections in where I live, in the state that I live in, which, I'm gonna be honest, I'm glad that influence is not there, but, like, I've seen the kind of the damage and destruction that they've done at school board meetings and in those communities where those school districts are, and I think it's not a hard line to walk, but when you know that that's a potential issue or situation you're gonna face in it where it could also cost you your job, it's like, it's a very difficult situation to have to be in. So if it means cutting you, replacing you, shutting down the libraries if they don't want to rehire someone, my voice to say something, but then if they just don't replace me, if they do decide to cut me, like, then all these kids lose access to the library, and I do a lot of the students I work with, they love coming to the library. If I have to tell them they missed the library that week because they were absent the day I'm at the building, they get really upset by it, and not all of them have the opportunity to go to the public library. I mean, like, going to the school library is their only chance to go to the library and get a book, so it's a weird, difficult situation to be in.
Yeah, it puts school librarians in touchy situations because of just the dynamic, the way things are, and very similar to the challenges that public libraries are facing, like you said. You mentioned that there's different religions that the children are being raised in that attend your school. What is the primary demographic, like altogether? I know you're in Michigan,
Yeah.
and I know that that tends to be a diverse place, in the area specifically that you're in, but do you feel that the children's books in your library equitably and accurately represent those children that are in your school?
I think now that I've been here, it's getting there, and I wanna say I wanna say, like, in my district, I'm at the middle, high school, and elementary school level, like, this is the first time they've had librarians at all those levels in, like, 20 or 25 years. So, for people who are, listening to this who may not be a librarian, who may not understand how collections work, that means that the collections are that old. And so, so you need to think about what was being published all those years ago compared to what's being published now. And I think publishing has come a long way. It's become a lot better. It could continue to get better, but it's gotten a lot better. But because there hasn't been a person really tapped into it with getting books that adequately represent an equitable representation of diversity, inclusion, equity, inclusion, they're just getting generic run-of-the-mill books that don't actually represent the student population. So the district that I'm in currently, it's majority Black students. We have some Hispanic students, and then white students as well. We do get some newcomers every year, and so we've had like some from like the Caribbeans last year. I know recently we got some students from the Middle East, North Africa. So that's been a fun thing for me. But I look at the collection and I'm like, and especially with like children's books, like I know there's a statistic, but it's like where like the majority of children's books, the main character is like a like animal or like a random like inanimate object that can talk versus an actual like human
Mhm.
like a black child or a brown child or like, whatever,
Mhm.
instead of an actual human. And so like that's definitely the case with, my library and like with my collection, it's gotten better. But also like the kids are asking for like they want Lilo and Stitch books or they want Zootopia books. Like, they're also only asking for these types of books, but and then they don't always wanna ask for books where it has characters that look like them, so it's also those 2 things that you need a balance of, like, you wanna make sure you're getting books that the kids want to read and then books that represent them as well. I do get kids that ask for, like, Ruby Bridges books, which is good that they know of these important characters and they're asking for people other than, like, Martin Luther King Jr. or Rosa Parks. I think that I think they did a lot of good work for in civil rights and all that, but I'm glad that they, like, know about, like, Ruby Bridges or, like, other significant figures in the communities that they're from, you know what I mean? And besides the, like, ones that I don't wanna say, like, that everyone knows, but, like, are that are, kind of more talked about the most often is what I should say. And I think too, I'm building up a bilingual collection, which I think is great. A couple of my kids that are from the Middle East, North Africa, they also speak French, and they got very excited when I showed like they speak French and Arabic, and they're learning English. They got very excited when I gave them French books because they're like, "Oh my god, we like have never," and it's actually like interesting books to them too. So they got very excited by that. So I think it's getting there.
Oftentimes, public libraries, when they're talking equity, they're talking about racial equity. Is that the same in school libraries, would you say?
I think it's that. I do think that plays a part, and, like and I will say, like, I'm a newbie in school libraries, like, this is my 2nd year in school, yes. So I do think it's that, and I do think that, I do think, like, from what I've noticed, this is just my observation, is that I do think, like, religion is starting to come more into that too, because I have seen people that's like, "Oh, I want better books for Ramadan or about different holidays that are not Easter, Christmas,
Mhm.
whatever, the, like, more common or not more common, but, like, kind of institutionalized
Yes,
holidays that
holidays.
have been
Yeah.
held up, so that's, like, very fun to see, or, like, they're kind of, like, decolonizing Thanksgiving, and they wanna get more indigenous books instead of doing Thanksgiving display accurate representations of girls in hijab, or so it's nice to see that. And like I said earlier, publishing has come a long way, but it still has a long way to go. So there are stuff that's available. There can be more. I can always say there can always be more. And I say that as like I do collection development on how easy it is to find certain books on certain holidays or certain things versus other things. And oftentimes, like, I see when I end up finding is that a lot of things from marginalized communities are oftentimes published by, like, indie authors
Mhm.
or indie publisher and, publishing houses versus the major ones.
Oh, it makes a point. You're ultimately saying that people are requesting these books,
Yeah.
for Ramadan like that. However, patrons or students or families requesting a book is not the same as them obtaining the books for them. So,
Yeah.
like you said, a lot of people that are still collecting books, these books are 20, 25 years old. Uh, a lot has changed since then, and some things have not changed.
Yes, I'm the one that's in charge, mainly in charge of, purchasing the books. I do have some parameters I need to, like, stay within, obviously. I'm at an elementary school, right? So I have to be like, I can't be getting high school books for, that does not make sense, right? But, like, and I say this especially with, like, children. I think there's a lot of great, like, middle grade and, like, young adult, high school level books on these topics, and I think I get really excited when I see a book that I'm like, "Oh, this could fit so well in my collection." It sucks sometimes, like, it's really hard, to buy specifically for elementary school library, but then it's like, sometimes I find a book and then I'll Google the author because I always like to know who the author is, like, what other books they publish, and oftentimes the author does not match the experience that they are writing about in their book. And I'm not
So
saying that people cannot be experts in a field, um, but then I read the reviews of the book, and then it paints a picture that I need to that will help me understand. I'm like, okay, although this person may not come from this marginalized community, they did not do their research. They did not go and talk to people from that community in writing this book, and it shows. And I think that's also what's, like, really, like, unfortunate sometimes. Oh, this could have been so good if they had, like, done the work that's needed to, like, make this book a better book for kids, so
you're ultimately saying that at your district, you all have a decent or probably a good selection, a variety of books because you are doing it. But in most schools, they don't have someone that's going to be as observant or care as much or be tapped into the other ethnicities and lifestyles and values of the students as a whole. They continue going down the typical uh, way of collecting books. If you're only selecting from the top 5, there's not gonna be many Muslim voices. So, you're saying that you're able to go and get books from indie authors and things like that to be able to have different voices, perspectives, and experiences in the books for the children.
yeah.
So, how does the absence of that Muslim representation, in your opinion, impact both Muslims and non-Muslim students?
It doesn't help that, Muslim students can't properly see themselves in the literature that they're reading, or that they can find books that are, like, authentic and real to them and that accurately portrays them. I think oftentimes, like, there's so many books and things where it's just like It's just a child who is not Muslim, who just is living a normal family or, like, life experience, and that doesn't always translate to Muslim characters, in stories, or it also has to be, like, they're fleeing war or, like, ties to, like, terror, like, just, like, the most stereotypical things, right? And then also for, like, my non-Muslim students, like, this is also what they're seeing too, like, they're only seeing Muslims in the context of the situation, and not them just living a normal everyday life with an everyday family. And I think for both Muslim and non-Muslim students, or like in general, that's the box that they're viewing. And I think it's harmful for both of them because it leads to stereotyping. It leads to a lot of harmful internalization of like Islamophobia. It's like 2025. It is 2025. We could do better. We should have been doing better.
It's a very good point how you talked about some of the books that are available are not authentic voices. I think it's very important to have authentic stories. How do you think schools and libraries can work together to make sure that Muslim representation isn't overlooked in their collections?
There needs to be effort put into making sure that Muslim voices, authentic stories are put into it and not just checked by. I remember I was talking with an administrator one time about their biography section, and I said, like, this is a really awful because it pigeonholes so many groups and into like certain like stereotype. I was like, the only like Muslim representation I see is Malala. And I'm like, listen, Malala is great. Like I think she's done a lot of work, but I was like, there's more people for the Muslim community than just Malala. Like we need to like, you know what I mean? And this is a high school, so they kind of had more like Muslim poets, Muslim biographies, or Muslim mathematicians, and all this stuff. I was like, you have the opportunity here to really expand so much because you can have the literature that's available for high school students is so expands. And he was really like glad to hear that I pointed that out. And he was like, that's not something that occurred to me. And so I think sometimes people don't know, right? And like if you don't know, you don't know, and that's not always your fault, right? If you are not changing with the times and you're not consistently doing professional development to learn and to grow as an educator, regardless of whether you're an administrator, a teacher, a librarian, wherever you're at, if you're not constantly doing that, then this stuff isn't gonna click with you. So I think that's also a part of it, is that like it shouldn't always be like the librarian pointing this out. A librarian who
Mm,
truly cares and taps in, it should be, I feel like everyone should be tapped in. And like it's kind
yeah.
of a cop out that like that's just my opinion,
Mhm.
and not even just my opinion. I think that's like the best take that there is out there, and
I
people
I
might be offended by that. And if you're offended by that, then maybe you have some work you got to do.
very well said.
Yeah, that's
I
just me.
No, I agree 100%. I really do. Coming from the place of a librarian, I mention that quite often. Like, how is it your actual job to do research and you don't know the bare minimum of the people that are obviously in your community when libraries are supposed to show more than just who they think is in their little bubble? Because you don't know everyone who's in your bubble. Everyone doesn't walk out with signs with every single aspect of their lives, written on their forehead. It's not like that. So I want to backtrack just a little bit. You mentioned something about, the different types of books and, Malala. They just want to use this one example. Uh, I've actually brought Malala's name up specifically several times to make my points like, and even then she may be Muslim, but she's representing more culture than Islam, and that's fine, but know that difference.
Yeah, that's what I have to tell people. I'm glad that she's representing your culture. I can tell you right now, there's a lot of things like that from my experiences of Muslim. And like I'm a Lebanese Arab Muslim, that like there's a lot of things that like do not translate between me and Malala. And like I see that as like a Lebanese American Muslim who was born and raised in like Michigan and would travel back to like, Lebanon to visit her family. And like, I'm like, everyone's experience is so different and so vast. And like, we can't just be like, if that's your first thought is Malala for Muslim representation, then I was like, we need to, this is not to degrade Malala, but it was purely an example. And I'm glad that you brought that up because I'm like, I don't know, it's so exhausting. It's like the worst thing.
It
So
is.
yeah.
It's very exhausting, it's very draining. Um, I feel like people oftentimes who are not Muslim just come to work and do their job. I feel like Muslims always have a lot of explaining
Yeah.
and redirecting, and there's a lot of additional duties tacked on that you don't get paid for when while being in a librarian space, don't we all have access to information, research,
Yeah.
knowledge? Do some information, then ask me a question. You know, that's how I feel sometimes.
Well, and then what I've noticed too, and I say this as like someone who's a younger in the field, and like in comparison to like a lot of people in the field, like they've been in this career their whole lives, or this is their second career, or they have been working for so long, and like, there's a big age gap between me and a lot of my colleagues and peers. And I tell people I'm the oldest you can be in Gen Z. I think Gen Zs are very much comfortable with like speaking out, saying what's wrong, calling things out for what they are. Older generations are, and not like I'm the oldest you could be in Gen Z, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff I more align with millennials. I know a lot of older generations, they don't want to rock the boat. They're like, I need job security. I'm at the end of my career. I don't want to rock the boat. I've been doing this for this many years. I'm comfortable, and they just don't want to change, right? And I think too this is a profession that's very, very white. Like, it's like 90, like, it's a high 90 something percent. I come from teaching, and this profession, like being a library, is a whiter profession than being a school teacher.
Right.
Because I can at least say, I know a lot more teachers of color than I know librarians of color. In my area where I live, the other girl that I know that is a librarian of color, I went to high school with her. That is how small it is. And she's also a Muslim, like, library. It's like and even when I was in library school, like, the only other diversity that I saw were, like, classmates. I think it's, like, a lot of these, out of touch people who just, like, do not know the realities or know what to do, and I think a lot of librarians also, if they can't find something or they're struggling to find information, they're too embarrassed to ask a question because they're like, "We're librarians, we're supposed to know how to find information." And I think there's a lot of shame associated with that, and we need to, like, break down that shame. Like, it's okay to ask for help, it's okay to ask questions, it's okay if you can't find something, there's people that can help you with that. And so, there's, like, a lot of layers to this. It's like an onion, like, you peel it back
Really,
and you find more things.
there are many, many layers.
Yeah.
And the shame that you talk about, I agree. But I think that that shame comes from privilege and elitism.
Oh, it does. Like, I don't think it's, like, rooted in, like, "Oh, I just didn't know." It, like, does come from that.
Yes, it definitely comes from privilege and elitism where they don't really feel the need to have to know or understand anyone else's place, perspective, experiences. And even when it comes to selecting the books, and there's a lot of Ramadan books, even with that, I like that. I love seeing the Ramadan and Eid books and things like that. However, I know that only having those books confirms stereotypes because it's like, oh, this is their holiday, boom. They just live a holiday. What about our everyday lived experiences? That's like saying that someone is just equivalent to their Christmas book.
Yeah.
No, you have a whole life outside of Christmas. Christmas is one day out of the whole year, and you live a whole life before it, during, and after. So it's not just the holidays that need to be seen. It has to be the everyday lived experiences. The same way you're saying, okay, your Lebanese ethnicity, um, a black girl, she's still Muslim. You know, neither one of those people are going to resonate with Malala. So
No, it's like,
Malala
I think
is
it's very, like, with Islam specifically, the fact that it's practiced in so many different countries and so many different places around the world. Like, there's a lot of times where, like, the culture and the religion, like, religious practice that are common for the most part across all these different places, but, like, the cultural practices independent of the religion are so different. And that's even whether you're, like, in the diaspora or you're living in like, your land of origin, whatever. It's, like, so different because, like, my experience is as a Muslim Arab woman in America is different from, like, my family back home,
exactly.
right? Uh these displays specific to Arab American Heritage Month, they'll put Muslim books on there. If it's a Muslim Arab, like, sure, you can put it up there. And if they're like an Arab American and if they're talking about their Muslim experience as an Arab American, that fits. But a lot of times I'll see those displays and I was like, who did this? Because clearly they just did not do their due diligence of taking books off the shelves, like, at libraries and just giving it to staff and just, I'm like, this, I don't think this is appropriate, like, it's kind of wild.
I'm happy that you said that from an Arab perspective
Yeah.
because I talk about that all the time. I always say every Arab is not Muslim, every Muslim is not Arab. I've had someone tell me one time when I asked, how come we don't do Muslim Heritage Month?
Yeah.
And they told me, oh, well, we do Arab History Month.
Is that the same?
No.
Well, and, like, I think to, like, point that out too, like,
Well,
whenever I see, like, Black History Month displays, I, like, never or rarely see experiences from, like, Black Muslims, unless it's, like, Malcolm X, like, that's the unless I think also Malcolm X did a lot of great work, but, like, if Malcolm X is the only person you could think of to put in this display, we need to do better, right?
and have you noticed that they only put like activists, known activists, when they do
Mm,
Black History Month? Again, where is the regular lived experiences?
yeah,
All these things just solidify stereotypes. I- If the librarians can't get displays right, what do you think is happening or going through the patrons' brains and minds, the students'
yeah,
minds, that we are actually dimming the experiences, the lifestyles? We're dimming reality.
mhm,
We're removing reality when, as you said, libraries should be a community hub, or that they are that. Now they have to just portray that they have that place to be a community hub. But if many people say that religion doesn't belong in libraries, but you just now said that there's Bible club. In most public libraries, there's a Christian
yeah.
section.
Well, and
So
I like say that to say, I was like, okay, if religion doesn't belong in library, then do you mean that religious universities shouldn't have a library?
what about the Dewey Decimal System? All the 200s
Yeah,
is religion, and that's used in libraries.
yeah,
So when people say religion does not belong in libraries, I interpret that they mean anything besides Christianity doesn't belong.
mhm,
Public
yeah,
spaces,
yeah.
not just library, public spaces. So as librarians who uphold equity, and how you mentioned like the Moms of Liberty, what does that have to do with libraries upholding what they're supposed to do, which is be equitable? Yeah, we can go on and on about this. Both Muslims and non-Muslims. What do you hope your students, both Muslim and non-Muslims, will take from seeing more Muslim stories in their school libraries where you personally assist with collections?
I just hope that they take away that there actually are more similarities than differences. I believe that I think there's a lot of misunderstanding or things that people believe when it comes to like Muslims that we're a monolith, and I think that just breaking down those barriers, and I've had to do that in a lot of places where I've been like the only Muslim person, and having to bring that to light to like coworkers and students and things like that in a healthy professional way is what I've always tried to do.
If you could leave our viewers with one thing, what would it be regarding the importance of representation of Muslim literature and Muslim librarians specifically?
I would say do your research when it comes to collection development. Do like we I don't want to just see activists from the community in your displays and your collections, and I just don't want to see stereotypes, and it is not that hard. It is the easiest part. And as long as you're being authentic about it. And I think also it's important for all of us to make sure we're doing our due diligence and we are actively working on addressing gaps in our collections. I think we all have gaps in our collections, and that while publishing still has a lot of work to do, like we can still find books. And even if you don't have a majority Muslim population that you are serving, you may not have a majority from any marginalized community that you serve. It doesn't mean that like you still can't have voices from the community to represent. I think libraries have become learning and community hubs. People come to the library to learn, and it is our job and our responsibility to make sure that we have accurate representations of all communities in our libraries.
I think that's an amazing message. And
Yeah.
I hope that the Islamic Library Association can assist you in
Mhm.
doing what we're talking about. We're talking about filling those gaps, the importance of Muslim representation, the similarities and differences that should be shown so that it can break down barriers for librarians, administrators, students, everyone to do research to get the full perspective and to understand the lifestyles, understand the difference between culture and religion. You've mentioned a lot, you've made a lot of great points. Your perspective as a Muslim school librarian has been amazing. And then you're from Michigan, my hometown, so I'm super happy.
Mhm.
Yes, but that's all I had for you today. Your input has been phenomenal. Is there anything that you would like to add that perhaps I have missed?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. I think this podcast and this what you do is really good work.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to staying in touch, inshallah, and I'll speak with you soon.
Yeah.
Join the Islamic Library Association, and together we can shape a more inclusive future for literature.